It's the Global Thought Leader Insights. Brilliant thinking implemented. Brought to you by Internal Consulting Group. I'm Mark S.A. Smith. As a leader of your company, you must stay on top of your industry or risk obsolescence. This can be a daunting task. Get ready to solve your biggest challenges and learn how to capitalize on your biggest opportunities after this. Executives depend on external advisors to fill knowledge and experience gaps, to help them make a case for change, or to have an experienced mind audit their thinking. Internal Consulting Group brings together a wide range of proven thought leaders from around the globe and makes them available to you. Get access to insights, advice, and the tools you need to succeed. Learn more at internalconsulting.com. Our guest today on the Internal Consulting Group Global Thought Leader podcast is Vlatka Hlupic. She is the professor of business and management at the University of Westminster, a former adjunct faculty at the London Business School, the visiting professor at Birkbeck College, part of the University of London, and the founder and chief executive officer of the Drucker Society in London. She is an author, a speaker, TED Talk presenter, and we are here to talk about her book, The Management Shift, and her forthcoming book, which she'll reveal to you. Welcome, Vlatka.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be on the show.
We've got lots to talk about because you've got lots to share. Let's start off with the management shift. What needs to shift, and why are we shifting?
Well, we need to shift because we have a problem. The global figures for engagement, for example, show that only 13 to 18% of people are fully engaged at work. Global figure for passionate work, for performance are rather low as well. And in the last 50 years, corporate life expectancy and also performance have declined by 75%.
Substantially. Yeah, I just saw the numbers. It used to be corporations lasted for 61 years. Now the expected age is 18.
Absolutely. And the main reason for that are old ways of working, old ways of managing and leading organizations, which are based on traditional hierarchical command and control, micromanagement, standardization, specialization, that work well in a production economy where productivity was the key. But it is very detrimental for performance in modern organizations, which are highly knowledge intensive.
So this disconnection between people working and people at work being disconnected, what's the impact on a business when that happens?
Well, it has lots of negative impacts because there's a problem with staff retention, there is a problem with declining performance, problem with bottom line profit declining, and so on. And I mentioned some figures on engagement, there is a low productivity, passion for work, and so on. So we need to change the way we manage organizations, we need to change, we lead organizations, and we need to do it through the big shift. And the management shift is the how of this big shift.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about the why. Here's the deal. If we have falling profits, if we have high staff turnover, if we have a lot of customer churn, who gets blamed for that in an organization?
Well, anyone gets blamed.
Ultimately, the CEO.
Leaders.
The CEO gets blamed.
CEO?
Yeah, absolutely. The CEO gets blamed because that's their job. It is their job to run the organization efficiently and, most important today, flexibly.
Absolutely. They do get blamed, and formally they get blamed, but how it gets to be sorted out within the organization, then there are other people to blame as well. But when you talk about blame, that is level 2 on the 5 levels of the management shift. We can talk about that in a minute.
Yes, indeed. Well, the whole point here is that things are changing so rapidly, we have to change the way we manage our organization. And that's what the management shift is all about. Now, how do you approach the management shift? Let's talk about that.
Well, we approach it top-down and bottom-up. So we work with CEOs and senior leadership teams through our programs, such as the CEO shift, the individual shift, but we also approach it bottom-up through the organizational shift program, where entire organization gets involved. When I talk about the shift, I think it's very important to talk about the levels first before
Let's
we
do
talk
that.
about any, so that listeners can understand what we talk about. First of all, I want to say that the management shift overall is my life's work. It's based on over 20 years of my interdisciplinary research and consulting experience. I'm a computer scientist who became behavioral scientist. And because I studied so many different disciplines and worked in different disciplines, I've been able to connect the dots and to create the management shift, which is not just the book. The book is the tip of the iceberg, but there are many online tools, processes, there is a toolkit. So there's an entire system that we use as a consulting company. I have to mention that I'm also a CEO and founder of the Management Shift Consulting Limited, which is the company I established after I launched the book, and it got very successful. So the management shift is also the how of this big shift, because other scholars talk about why we need to shift from old to new ways of working. They talk about the what needs to be done. But so far, the how has been missing, and the management shift is that big how. And it has been used over many years with various organizations globally, in public sector, private sector, large companies, small companies. They all used it to shift to this high levels of working, which is level 4. And I think I better explain what these levels mean now.
Let's talk about these levels.
That's okay.
What I wanted to summarize here for our listeners is very simple. Vlatka, you are a systems thinker. And what you've done is put together a system that allows us to take an organization and actually transform it into the state they want to be. Not only from your computer programming strategy approach, but also your psychology approach. And that combination of systems thinking and human understanding is extraordinary. Share with us your levels.
Okay, well, we have 5 levels. At level 1, mindset is lifeless, and there is corresponding organizational culture, which is apathetic.
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 And the customer response is pathetic. I bet we can think of some lifeless organizations that used to be. They don't last long anymore.
Absolutely. But before I go through levels, let me just say very briefly that at every level, there is specific mindset, thinking patterns, language used, leadership style, and organizational outcomes. We can't skip the levels. We can only shift to one level at a time.
Makes sense.
And when we have a critical mass of people, especially leaders at specific level, there is corresponding organizational culture. So as I said, level 1, lifeless mindset, apathetic culture, not much gets done. People are too depressed to do anything. And there's a lot of fear and the blame, and you talked about the blame already. Sometimes we see pockets of different levels in different organizations, but we're talking about a dominant level. So then at level 2, the mindset is reluctant and culture is stagnating. This is where people do a minimum they can get away with just to get their paycheck. They bring their body to work, but they leave their heart and mind at home. Think about TV series Office. I think there is a US version as well.
There is.
David Brent, that is level 2. And we can see some pockets of level 2 in different organizations. And then level 3, the mindset is controlled and the culture is orderly. So at level 3, we tick the boxes, we do what we are told to do, we are micromanaged. But do you think we are really passionate about the work, fully engaged and performing at high level at level 3? I don't think so.
Well, what you've just described, Vlatka, is actually 3 levels of hell for both the manager and the worker.
Yes, and the sad thing is, this is where majority of organizations are. I would say about 85-90% of organizations are level 2, level 3, roughly.
Which is the reason why half the Fortune 500 rolls over every decade, and we're expecting to see that go up to 75% starting immediately because of the digital disruption, because people aren't putting up with that anymore.
Exactly. And this is why we have all these figures that we mentioned at the beginning of interview. People are not engaged. It's very hard to attract and to keep the talent. It's hard to sustain performance and profit long term. And so levels 1 to 3, this is traditional management, and this is still prevailing today in organizations. And then we go through the big shift, the management shift. This is where we move to level 4. At level 4, the mindset is enthusiastic, culture is collaborative. And the key words here are trust, transparency, purpose, having fun working, giving back to society, collaboration. This is where we unleash all this internal energy in organizations. This is where we get all the figures for engagement, performance, profit, productivity. They all go up substantially.
It's a massive shift. A massive shift.
It's a massive shift. It's a massive shift. We are talking about 200% increase in profit in 2 years, which we have seen in several companies we worked with.
That would make an executive look good.
Very good. And the paradox here is when leaders let go of power, they get more power back because more is achieved with less effort, and they are seen as a true leaders.
Right on.
And then occasionally we can tap into level 5 energy. At level 5, the mindset is limitless, culture is unbounded. This is where we have a highly innovative teams working day and night away from organizational boundaries on some amazing innovations to change the world, to help to solve some big problems to humanity. Think about Google X inventing driverless cars. Think about Elon Musk exploring space and so on. That is level 5. We can't be there all the time. We would burn out, but we want to be anchored at level 4, tap into level 5 as often as possible, stay there for a while, go back to level 4. When we are at level 4, sometimes we go back down, we can have a bad day, hear some bad news, but we just bounce back easily and quickly to level 4, and we are much more resilient.
Interesting. You've mentioned a couple of leaders that operate at the unbounded level. How about some conversation around organizations that you see that are commonly known at the collaborative level?
Yes, there are organizations that are at collaborative level. Examples, WL Gore or Morningstar, for example. Everybody knows about those. I discovered various other organizations which are described in my new book as well, which we can talk about later. So it all started with visionary CEOs that are able to see that there is a different ways of working, and they were able to just let go of control and just allow this self-organization, experimentation with ideas, distribution of decision-making and power, helped by the use of technology as well, so that communication goes in all directions, not just top-down, and so on. So there are a number of processes that can be used to achieve that level 4, and this is what the management shift is about.
I think that you just scared a couple of our listeners. What do you mean distributed decision-making? What do you mean letting go of control of the processes? I think some people are just frightened right now.
Well, there's no reason to be frightened because everything is complex and volatile these days. We live in this VUCA world. It's impossible for the CEO at the top to have all the knowledge to make the right decision for organization. So it is a good idea to let people who have the best knowledge, the best experience, that they have the know-how of what customers know at the lower level to make those crucial decisions for the business if they have the best knowledge. Because, as I said, it's impossible for somebody at the top to have all the knowledge, and the whole decision making. It takes such a long time when it's all trickled down from top down. So
and there's a lot of mistakes because we move so fast today. Technology is advancing so rapidly, both human technology as well as digital technology and everything else involved. And if you can't delegate down, you're dead.
Absolutely, because it takes such a long time, and you do make mistakes because you just don't know what's best. Because people dealing with the customers, another example, Handelsbanken, for example, they decentralize their branches and they outperform other banks, and they survive the financial crash much better than many other banks and so on.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And the reason why is because banks tend to serve communities. And the culture of the bank needs to adapt to that local community. And if you have a centralized bank and you're imposing a culture on every branch, you are going to disconnect from, 80, 85% of your communities that you serve.
absolutely. That's what the CEO said. Where we're sitting here in the ivory tower, we don't know what the customers want, but the managers of local branches, they do, and they can make decisions on the basis of the needs and wants of their customers. And that's why they perform so well over many, many years.
Beautiful. I think that the whole idea here is that we have to change how we behave, given the fact that humans are more and more demanding to be recognized as individuals versus as monolithic responders to a monolithic corporation. And that means there's going to be a lot of variability. There's going to be a lot of complexity. One thing I do know is that executives know very clearly the direction, but they don't know the details. They leave that to the people, the good people that they've hired. Now they know the details that matter. And I think that's really an important component of this being collaborative and unbounded. Really, really good. We'll be back with more after this. The world is moving fast. It's difficult to keep up. Your executive team needs new ideas to keep them ahead of the competition. Download and share the Internal Consulting Group's monthly executive magazine, The Insights Review. Every issue includes thought leadership and ideas that you can leverage to solve issues and harvest opportunities facing you. Get your complimentary copy from internalconsulting.com/publications. So how do you implement this shift? My bet is that you probably work more with companies that are controlled to collaborative than lifeless.
You can't skip the levels. So the perfect client would be somebody at level 3 who has open mind and awareness of the benefits of shifting to level 4. And how do I do it? How do we do it? I have a team that works with me as well. We use tools and processes. So coming back to the 5 levels, I've been using this level for a number of years to help CEOs and C-level executives and the executive teams to shift to level 4. And then one day I had another epiphany. I love epiphany. So I thought I had to figure out how to help entire organization to shift to level 4. And I had to figure out how to help many organizations to shift to level 4 globally. Mm-hmm. So I went back to my research again, and I did a lot of more research, and I looked into data from dozens of case studies, hundreds of interviews, thousands of references. Through thematic analysis, I figured out that there are around 150 factors in organizations that drive innovation, value creation, performance, profit in companies.
That's a lot of complexity. 150 factors.
Yes, but what I did, I think what people said I made complex simple. So I grouped those factors in 6 key areas.
All right.
And that is how I created the 6-box leadership model. And then I created an online diagnostic tool with 120 questions that collects qualitative and quantitative data to measure hidden strengths and weaknesses for companies or parts of an organization in those 6 areas. And those areas are culture, so we can measure what kind of culture organization has, relationships, how well people work together, individuals, their mindset, drives, motivation, strategy, how it gets developed, executed, systems, how the work gets done, resources. And this is like an organizational MRI. So we scan and see what works well, where are the bottlenecks. And then in the next phase, we prescribe the medicine. So we use the action planning process I designed using design thinking. And then we work with the client to help them to design a 1-year action plan, which will be very specific. So we will select a few key strengths and weaknesses, strengths to develop further and weaknesses to address. And then we end up with this specific action where it is specified who is going to be responsible for this action, what is going to be done, what is the time scale, how will the success be measured, and so on. And then we can rescan within 12 to 18 months to see how well we are at the level 4 then. And examples, we use it with lots of companies. It was used for the UK government. We designed a training program for senior civil servants on the basis of this work. But which lasted for 3 years. It was used for FTSE 100 company to improve performance of company, and within 3 years, profit went up by 213%. We use it, for example, for National Health Service Trust to shift the company to become more humane and more people purpose focused, and they started investing more in well-being and training and development of employees. So there are different benefits. For example, City of London insurance company, they became more charitable externally, but also internally within their own company, they became more transparent, open, and that really helped the engagement of staff and so on. So the different benefits, and we collect data once. It takes less than 20 minutes to go through a survey. We can survey thousands of people at the same time through software. Then we get the data, we get the report, and then we can use it for lots of different areas. So it can be used as a culture shifting tool, but so we help to shift to level 4. It can be used to design bespoke training program. It can be used for mergers and acquisitions. For example, we scan company A, company B, and then you see what sort of trouble you are going to get into when you try to merge apples and pears, and we can manage that.
Mm-hmm. Or apples and rocks.
Anything, yes. It can be used as a performance improvement tool or to facilitate talent strategy or risk. It can flag risks in financial sector companies. It can be used for succession planning, diversity inclusion, clinical governance in healthcare, and so on. So it's very versatile. We use it in different industries with very large companies where we would do a sample of employees and that will go through a survey, or small companies. So it's quite flexible. So this is the big how in a nutshell of the big shift. I have been thinking with my team, how do we make the humane capital alive? How do we help people to really grasp all these concepts? Because there's so much data in there. And I know from my research in education that you really need to experience it practically to really learn and remember. So what we did, we developed a board game, Humane Capital, which will be launched at the same time as the book in October this year, where groups of between 1 and 8 people can use the board game and explore the pillars, learn about the pillars, learn about the key strategies to support each of the pillar, and also decide on some action that they can take on some of those strategies. So it's intended to be used internally within organization with the senior management teams, but also for MBA students. They can then learn the pillars and strategies and see how organizations can become more humane.
I think that's really clever, because today half the population learns through gaming.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's a lot of components to this, but it's a complete package, which is the model, it's the analysis tool, it's the diagnostic tool, then there's the prescriptive outcome that falls out of that, and then there's the implementation plan so that it actually happens. There actually is the transformation through time. And then the ability to go back and check and find out how healthy you've become versus the goal of the executive. This seems to me to be a program that must be driven by the board of directors or the CEO level.
Absolutely. These are our key clients. So we need to have a buy-in and sponsorship from the top. CEO level, executive board, they need to understand the benefits before they start implementing and going through the program. That is crucial. And then it goes top down and the bottom up, because the way it was designed was that when we go through action planning process, we use a kind of a crowdsourcing approach where employees at different levels are asked to contribute with their ideas, what would work best and what kind of small changes can be done for big impact. We know from complexity theory we can do that. A small change can lead to big impact. And the people on the ground, people working with customers, they have this knowledge. We know that innovation can emerge in any pockets at any level in organization. So I deliberately designed it so that people's voice is being heard. And we know from research, when people participate in strategy development, in planning development, the execution will be much more successful because it hasn't been imposed top down.
Well, it's a complete alignment of their motivation and relationship with the outcome we're looking for. And this is a combination of two interesting things. One is the idea of what's the highest leverage item that we can select. And number two is what is going to be the reason why we're willing to pull that lever. And doing so at all levels creates immediate engagement, which you said is one of the biggest things that we're missing. And it also brings into play the most desirable factor for employee engagement, which is being in on things.
Absolutely. If people get involved, they will give everything they can in the implementation phase, and that is the whole idea behind it. And when you engage people at all level, and when we do diagnosis, we can slice the data anyhow. So per managerial level, so we can see the scores for CEO and an executive team and middle-level management and everybody else, or we can slice per department or geographical location. And it's very interesting when we separate the data from top-level management to everybody else. People at the top think that they know what is happening in organization, but the data can show that they actually don't. And everything is done anonymously. And for every question, people can write comments. They can just open their heart and their soul and say how they really feel about certain aspects that we are measuring. And it's all done in a safe way. It's all anonymous. So there's no way to trace back who said what. And with that openness, a magic can happen in organization.
Yet, executive listening right now, it means that you have to have some courage to be able to face the truth about what's really going on in your organization. And if you've got that courage, then you can make the shift. Let's make a shift to talking about your new book, which is going to be released very soon, if not already released by the time you're listening to this. Why did you write it, and what is it?
It's called Humane Capital, and the subtitle is How to Create a Management Shift to Transform Performance and Profit. So in 2015, I had a big birthday coming up, and I thought, what am I going to do? And I didn't fancy climbing the mountain or doing some marathons. And I thought, would it be amazing if I interview 50 leaders about their strategies and their mindset for the shift, how they have done it in the practice. And that's what I started doing. And then I couldn't stop. So I kept doing those interviews. So at the end, I interviewed 58 leaders. I had about 272,000 words of qualitative data in transcripts. I collected information about 35 case studies, and those leaders have altogether combined experience of over 1,700 years of leadership, practical experience. So it's an amazing collection of data sources, and I've analyzed everything manually and through computer software and Vivo. And the book has, in the first 4 chapters following introduction, has 35 case studies grouped in per sector. So we have a chapter on private sector, corporations, SMEs, and non-profit. And at the end of each chapter, there are 50 strategies that CEOs and leaders can use in those sectors to make their organizations more humane. So it's all about shifting to level for humanizing organizations, and also it's all about doing well by doing good.
Very nice.
Showing that companies that are socially responsible, they have a substantially better long-term performance as well.
Well, that is so critical as we make the shift from the baby boomer culture to the millennial culture, where millennials are more focused on culture than they are on career.
Yes, absolutely. So I have these case studies with those specific strategies for those specific sectors. And then I pulled all data together from all sectors, from all interviews. And then I figure out that there are 8 key pillars that make companies more humane.
What would you share with us, preview for us those 8 pillars?
I'm not allowed until October.
Not allowed. Okay. We're going to have to go get the book to get the pillars. All right.
My publisher said before October I can talk about the book, but I can't say what the 8 pillars are. But in chapter 7, I have some other very interesting material I can share, and already I'm publishing some articles about it. So I'm also talking about what are the key barriers, so why it's not happening on a larger scale. We said at the beginning we only have 10-15% of companies operating above level 3. We also talk about the value of that big shift to level 4 and to humanizing organizations. And that was an awesome conversation I had with all these leaders, because the value that they have identified is so powerful, and it ranges from qualitative to quantitative values. So some people say it's the matter of life and death. It's the difference between having a meaningful life and not living at all. And some people gave me figures, tens of millions, billions of pounds, or some people say it's priceless. There is no price for magic. You can't measure it. It's really the only way forward. So I got some really, really powerful quotes from all these leaders about why we need to operate at level 4 and what are the benefits, or what is the price to pay if you don't do it. Basically say, well, we wouldn't be around anymore if we didn't shift.
That's right. The price of failure right now is corporate death, which of course is lethal to a CEO. Really, really good. Lots of good things. Can't wait to see your latest book, The Humane Capital. I love the title. And so how do people get a hold of you, Vlatka?
Best way is just to email me. So people can email to info@themanagementshift.com. I have the website, themanagementshift.com, and the contact details are there as well. So either info@themanagementshift.com or using my first name, Vlatka@themanagementshift.com. So we work with clients, but we also work with consultants and trainers that work in executive education, because we run accreditation programs for practitioners and trainers, so they can use all these tools and processes and the whole system, the management shift system, they can use with their own clients and get access to that with my support in the background as well.
Terrific. And of course, you can be contacted through the internal consulting group. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and insight, and for scaring the heck out of our listener and also giving them some hope.
Thank you for inviting me here, and let's spread the ripples. That's the analogy I use with my work. It's all about spreading ripples. That's
it. Ripples, let's take them on out. Thank you.
Thank you.
That wraps up this episode. Go to internalconsulting.com/global-thought-leaders to contact today's guest. If you like the show, share it with your executive team and review us on iTunes. This is Global Thought Leader Insights. Brilliant thinking implemented.